You know you got a startup opportunity when customers are punching you in the face because they're pissed about something. Customer pain is opportunity.
Welcome, Roger.
Thanks so much, Elliot. And before we start, congratulations on the fantastic success of the firm and on your new podcast. Couldn't be more happy for you.
Thank you so much. Well, it's a pleasure to have you on. I guess just to introduce yourself, Roger, for the folks who may not know who you are, would love to hear a little bit about your background and how we got here today.
Sure. Let's see. My journey to become a venture capital person in cybersecurity is a long and circuitous one. Let's see. I was born in New Mexico, part of an Air Force family. We ended up in California, went to school there, and as luck would have it, where I grew up there was where the Silicon Valley was. That all happened when I was a child growing up there. And when I got out of college, I was very lucky to get to join a really cool startup. And back then, cool startups were semiconductor companies. So I caught the last generation of the reason it's called the Silicon Valley there, and it was a Kleiner Perkins-backed company. The name of the company was Cypress Semiconductor. Actually had roots back here in Austin, Texas. A couple of the founders were from out of UT, and little did I know I'd end up back here many years later. But figured out one day I didn't really like hardware as much as I liked software, so I went back to school. Somehow landed a job at Apple Computer, worked on operating systems and development tools, and then I've got a good friend who's one of the co-founders, really the driving force behind Ballistic, Ted Schlein. And Ted one day asked me a question, and it was basically, what are firewalls made out of? And I told him, well, it's software, and then put it in a case and a little bit of hardware. And he says, aha, why is it that a firewall can be up against the ravages of the internet, but all other software can't? What's different about that software? And the question really vexed me. And then he and I ended up starting a security company together, and that's all I've done ever since. That was Y2K, right around 2000, 2002 we incorporated.
Amazing. And yeah, throughout the podcast today, we're going to talk through a couple of different topics. The purpose of Keep Austin Secure is to share the names and the amazing stories that are coming out of Austin. So we'd love to talk a little bit about Austin's cyber scene and I guess where the scene's growing over the next couple of years. But we'd love to talk about Ballistic and also your founding journey and where it all began, really. So I guess to start things off, I know you've spoken about it there slightly, but Fortify, 2002, thinking about setting something up potentially, thinking about customer problems. What actually led you to founding the business?
Yeah, well, it started on that. I was a reluctant founder in the sense that it was a friend of mine that challenged me with something that I didn't have a satisfactory answer for. But I also, that first company I worked out of when I was a kid, I remember the founder of that company was a force of nature. This guy, T.J. Rogers, just amazing business person, incredibly smart, just a tornado of energy. And I remember he was 39 when he founded the company, and I think in today's era that's old. I certainly thought so when I was getting out of college, but it seemed to me to be about the right age to start something, because you go out and you kind of work for as many great companies as you can, learn from them, figure stuff out, and then when you still got the energy and you've got knowledge under your belt, you get started. So Fortify was when I was 39 years old, and there was that element was behind me. I knew I always wanted to be involved in startups, whether a key employee or the founder. I just wanted to be in that arena. Fortify, though, really came with that observation that software could be built better so that it could withstand attack. And actually, there's another Englishman, Ross Anderson, wrote a really seminal book on the subject. It's called Security Engineering. I got my hands on that, read it. There was another thing that I had read, and it was the hackers used to publish, white papers, I guess. And there was one called Smashing the Stack for Fun and Profit, written by the hacker name was EP1. And it explains what a buffer overflow is and how to create one and take advantage of it. And the funny part is, I'm coming from working on compilers and operating systems, so the technical material is very straightforward. And then when I read it, and it just blew my mind, right? Because, when you make computers, you think about, there's the sanctitude of the operating system in the machine, and then the user software, and then the users. The idea that a user could come through all that and take over the machine was crazy. And after I read that paper, I called my old boss, who at the time was at Juniper Networks, and his name was Doug, and I said, Doug, do you know about buffer overflows? And he's all, yeah, memory leaks. Oh, no, man. The users are taking over the computers. He's like, hey, you need help? He hangs up on me. I call a guy who was a real key person at Microsoft. He also vaguely understood there was something going on with the hackers, a friend at Apple. And at that point, it was like, I was hooked. Okay, we got to solve this problem. And fast forward, we built a product that you could utilize while you're programming. This is now a multi-billion-dollar-a-year industry. But back then, we learned about the banks and the DoD, telcos, who all had that problem and were fighting against it. We couldn't give it away to anybody else. So the early days, security was really, from a code point of view, it was only practice in a small
Wow.
part of the market.
And you grew the business 8 years, sold it to HP. How did you find the start of that journey?
Well, so there is nothing greater than, from a work point of view, of course, than creating a new company. And that is because at the very beginning, you're not burdened by customers, employees, competitors. It's you and some of the smartest people you've ever worked with, figuring it out. You're out talking to as many potential customers as you can. It's just sheer joy. And so the beginning is peaceful. It's great. It's hard work. It's very intense. I had a pattern that worked for me very well. I had the founding engineering team were a small collection of super experienced people, 10, 20 years experience, and then a number of people fresh out of college. So people that knew 100 different ways to get things done, and then people that weren't burdened with what's possible and what's impossible. And you put that together, and it's magic. Building the company, joyful at times. But one thing I always tell founders, when you build a company, you will hit some lows, and when you're in those lows, you will understand disdain for something like you probably never did before. So I'm a big fan of making sure you vest your shares back, because sometimes that might be the only thing that keeps you from walking out the door. And so you got the highs, you got the lows, and you gotta stay with it. And,
Yeah.
Selling the company is a sad day, even when it makes sense. Back then, our market was what it was, and we dominated the market. And so there wasn't a lot of room to scale and grow it. If we'd stayed with it for another 20 years, it's become a big market. And back then, HP was the world's largest testing company. And so the theory of a lot of people was security was another element of testing. And turns out now security is a much bigger market than software testing.
Yeah, it's so interesting because I've spoken with multiple founders, obviously, over the past couple of years, and I was chatting to one the other week, and he was saying he took his business, grew it, scaled it, they sold it for, I think, 200, 300 million, and he said, actually, the day that they sold and the day that the money hit his bank, I said, how did you feel? And he said he felt empty.
Yeah.
He said a part of him part of his personality, a part of his drive just kind of disappeared then and there. And as you are setting up businesses, and maybe not for the experienced founders, but definitely for the first-time founders, a lot of them think about that exit date as the sign for success and like the variable that determines whether it worked or whether it didn't work. When in reality, it's about the journey, really, isn't it?
It really is. You know, when you're young, and a lot of founders, I think, like myself, you didn't come from money, and so if you make money, it changes a lot of things in your life, makes a lot of things easier. But that pales in comparison the mission you were engaged in. And one of the greatest things about founding a company is you build a team that, for better or worse, is going to share a lot of the same values and a shared mission with you. And so you go really, really close to those people. And the team we had at that company, I'm still good friends with most of them to this day. I mean, lost track with some people, but when we see each other, it's a wonderful thing. Many of them are working in startup companies that I'm invested in now, and so that camaraderie, the day you sell it, you're going to miss that.
Yeah. And you went from Fortify into founding AlienVault.
Yeah, well, a little bit about AlienVault. So AlienVault was a Spanish company that was founded by some people in Europe. I was part of the team that created an American version of it. And so the AlienVault entrepreneurs had moved from Europe to the U.S., and they were trying to build a company, and very difficult to do, right? And so they fortunately ran into a good friend of mine back from the Apple days, Alberto Yepes, who's a principal at another cyber venture firm, Forgepoint. And Alberto sought to make an investment in the firm, but the conditions were that there be an American founding team for the American operation. And another one of my Ballistic partners, a wonderful person, Barmak Mefta. At that point in time, we're all at HP. To be honest, I would have liked to have taken a little time off to, as sad as I was about not having that team anymore, it was really nice not to work hundreds of hours a week and be on the road constantly. But Barmak really was looking for that first CEO job. And so he and Alberto met, and he fell in love with the idea of taking this company. And you know that old saying, Grandma said, if your friend jumps off the bridge, are you going to jump off the bridge? Hell yeah, because your friend's going to need your help, right? So for me, AlienVault was simple. My friend was going to go do it. My other friend was investing in it. So we jumped in and brought a couple of other wonderful people along from Fortify. One of the founders in the Ballistic portfolio, Russell Spittler, joined us, and so we got there, and then we said, okay, well, what did we sign up for? And that was a hard journey, because the theory there was the SIM market, which is, it's an area of cybersecurity where you get all the data from what's going on in your networks and your endpoints, and you put it all in a big container, big data before it was cool. And you run analytics on it, and you kind of figure out what the bad guys are doing, and you automate response. And so we had sold our software security, or code security company at HP, and both from a legal point of view, you sign a contract saying you won't compete, and from an integrity point of view, I would never want to compete with something I had built and sold. And so the SIM market was great, something new and different. As luck would have it, HP had also bought the market leader in SIM. It was called ArcSight. So ArcSight, Fortify, and another company were all put together to become HP Security. And my friends, the founders of ArcSight, were friends of mine. They had taken off before we did. So we were at HP, and we were responsible for these two products. And I'd go on sales calls, and I'm all excited to talk about your software development and building code right. And I would say 2/3 of the sales calls, I'd just get punched in the face about ArcSight and how difficult it was to deploy and blah, blah, blah. And so I called my buddy, Hugh Engemanzi, who was the technical founder of ArcSight. And I'm like, Hugh, what's up with the product? He's like, oh, you need to go talk to, and it was one of the big defense contractors. So I go in there, and they show me what they're doing with ArcSight. And they had their security engineers, they had their data scientists, they had their programmers. There was about 27 people that ran this program, and they were able to do magical stuff, right? And so I go back to the customers, and I'm like, well, you need to hire data scientists and programmers, and they get punched in the face again. And so and you and I talked about this before. You got a startup opportunity when customers are punching you in the face because they're pissed about something, right? So customer pain is opportunity. And so we thought, AlienVault will be a simpler way to get those same answers as you could with ArcSight. And the challenge was, we had built Fortify. It was very high end of the market kind of product. So, someone will have a statistic, 8 out of 10, banks or whatever use your product. We had 200 of the top 200 banks in the world used Fortify. We had all the major telcos. We had all the anybody in the DoD that made software. And so we took AlienVault to the banks and the telcos. And it wasn't a fit, right? Because they had, first of all, spent tens of millions of dollars on ArcSight recently. And so one of the great joys with AlienVault is we learned about the mid-market, called the small to medium enterprises, the thousands of companies out there that make the economy work, and they don't get the attention of the big security vendors. And a friend of mine refers to it as target rich but security poor. And so we optimized that product to be very affordable, very easy to get started with, and towards the end, I think we ended up tens of thousands of customers. We had an open source franchise that was in the tens of thousands. Very different kind of business.
Yeah.
But again, wonderful team that you fight a lot of battles with, and you miss being a part of when it comes to an end.
Yeah, and I guess looking back at both Fortify and AlienVault, I know they were different in terms of ICP and growth of the business and area of security. But what are the most surprising lessons that you learn from a technical leadership or business standpoint that you carry through into the work that you do today?
Because I really believed it was important to go get some great experience. So the semiconductor companies were the best in the world to learn about startups. A lot of the things that we now have terms for and books are written about, that was invented by that crowd. And so I learned a lot from them. And then when I went to Apple, I think the best place in the world to learn how to make software. I didn't mention I had a fixer firm where for a number of years I had a team mostly of super guru rock star engineers that worked for me at Apple, and we'd go fix things that were broken. And this was during the .com era, so did projects for E-Trade and eBay and other large companies, or growing companies. So I don't think during the startup there was really much that I hadn't seen before. If anything was surprising, and it certainly wasn't new information, was just how freaking hard it is to build a company. I mean, it really is difficult, and that is the case when you're working on a problem that's real with a great team of people, and if you believe it's going to be easy, if you believe you're just going to build something and go get money and you're not going to have to fight some of the most intense battles that you've ever fought, you're not setting yourself up for success.
Yeah. I think that's what we were speaking about before, wasn't it? The combination of being really smart, but also having that grit and the right mentality. Yeah.
I think one of the great things about working in technology, you don't get as many brutal, vicious, ruthless individuals. There's some, but boy, in other industries, that's all you got. And so in technology, you got a little bit more space to operate. But if you go really study some of those founders, and I'm my formidable years were the Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak and Bill Gates and wonderful people, but those guys were insane competitors.
Yeah, no, it's fascinating. And I guess transitioning through the conversation from founder to investor, you set up Ballistic Ventures with an amazing team that you'd worked with before and good friends. What actually motivated you to set up the business?
Yeah, well, remember that Fortify story, my friend Ted, that challenged me? It was Ted again. So AlienVault had it found a very nice home in AT&T. So AT&T acquired AlienVault, and then it used the company to be the basis of its cybersecurity business. And I really can't say enough great things about AT&T. Big companies get a bad rap for a lot of good reasons, but man, that company had some really amazing talent at the top. They were super supportive. They helped us amazingly. So we had a business unit. We grew it to be a little bit over $1 billion in revenue, and found an artful and elegant way to go back to our roots and keep our friendship intact with all the folks there. And so when we had gotten out of there, Barmack and I went to go visit Ted, who was at Kleiner Perkins, which he had been there for about 30 years. And he had just finished bringing in a new generation of investors to take Kleiner Perkins for the next 20 years. And a lot of the people that he was there with, he was sort of the young person. So some of the great folks like John Doerr retiring. He was too young to retire, too old to go do another big turn on KP. And so he had this idea, why don't we create a venture capital firm? And Barmack and I were like, yeah, sure, why not? I don't think I would have been interested in joining a venture capital firm. It's a different culture, and you kind of. I don't think it would be a place where I would enjoy working. But if you get to create one, you get to create a unique culture. And we all agreed that, first of all we want to do is cybersecurity. All we want to do is early stage. Why? Because we've got some value to add there, and B, it's what we love doing, right? And so first of all, you focused on what you really love. And then our other belief was, there's a lot of great venture capital firms out there, but most can do a much better job of really being in the shoes of the entrepreneur and helping them build the business. And so Ted's original vision was he'd be the only person with venture capital experience that would be all founders. We convinced him that we should hire another investor, and so I've got a partner named Jake Said, who is an amazing career in venture capital. Ted, of course, and then Barmack, myself, and Kevin Mandy are all founders, and so it's a good balance of people that know what they're doing from a venture point of view, and entrepreneurs. I'd be remiss to say, remember, Ted was my co-founder at Fortify, so venture person extraordinary, yes, but also a founder. Jake had actually left Lightspeed Ventures to found a company. So we're all founders, but those two know a lot about venture. So you build a company with people that you know and trust. You're focused on something you really love doing. I love entrepreneurs. So my job 80% of it is with people that I love being around, right? So that part's great. There's venture capital firms have to administer themselves, so we got to, do management stuff. We do marketing. We have to fundraise. There's other parts too, but the main part is you're helping entrepreneurs build businesses, or in many cases you might be giving them feedback on their business, and it's not someone you invest in, but you still hopefully they benefit from whatever you can share with them to be helpful, and you of course learn from them. So it's a wonderful thing. We've expanded the firm now, and so we've got partners. Nicole Perlroth, who's an award-winning journalist from the New York Times, who wrote the book that anyone who's interested in cybersecurity should read. This is How They Tell Me the World Ends. And her podcast, To Catch a Thief, is absolutely a must listen to. And she brings a whole different point of view. Nicole, every once in a while, will be in some new area, and she's like, don't forget, I'm an investigative journalist. Just tell me what I need to go figure it out. I'll figure it out. And she's an amazing network, and incredibly gifted person at being able to take these complicated, sometimes ideas that entrepreneurs have and tell the story in the way the world can understand it. And then Phil Venables has joined us. Phil's was one of my first customers at Fortify when he was in charge of security at Goldman Sachs. And there's a little story I love to tell about him. It might have been the first or second time we met in a very formal meeting. We're there down on Maiden Lane in New York at the Goldman Sachs headquarters, and he introduces himself as, "Hi, I'm Phil." I think his title was Chief Security Officer back then. He saw, but I am not responsible for security at Goldman Sachs. Well, my job is to help the people who are responsible, and that would be the 39, I think it was at the time, managing directors who run the business. I help them understand what cyber risks they're taking in executing their business, and then I've got a team of experts that'll help them mitigate that risk. And then I take all of that and report it to the board. And brilliant, obviously one of the most powerful, influential CISOs, because he really understood it's the people who run the business that need to own the risk, and the CISO is the person that can help them do that. And kind of a naive thing to say, hey, you guys just do whatever you want to do, and I'll own all the risk. Yeah. So David Hahn is another great person. Agnes So is our CFO. Michelle Kincaid, our VP of Marketing. So everybody there are just phenomenal people. Kind of going back to the Fortify, same theme, and we all love what we do. I'm the one. Well, actually, Michelle and I are based in Austin. The firm's in Menlo Park. So I get to work in that part of the venture capital world, but I don't have to live there. Just a little dream come true.
No, amazing. I know you've got a stellar team and a clear focus and a vision of what Ballistic do and what makes Ballistic great, but there are obviously other venture capital firms that do focus on early stage cybersecurity. What is it that makes Ballistic stand out? What makes you different?
Yeah, well, a couple of things. It might be surprising to know, but all of us that do early stage cybersecurity, we know each other, we're friends. So it's not as competitive as you would think. We probably end up competing more with the large generalist firms on Sand Hill Road. And the way we've constructed the firm, it's a puzzle that only goes together one way. And so we, by our agreement with our limited partners, we're going to be investing in companies that we incubate. We did 2 of those in our first fund. We're on track to do 2 in our second fund. And that's where the firm is the founders of the company. And then we recruit the team, including our co-founders, to build the companies. So we do incubations. We'll do seed investing, and we'll do A investing. And in the history of the firm, we've done a couple of B rounds, but they're real exceptions. Anything beyond that, our only investing is in companies that we are previously invested to support their growth, right? The large firms on Sand Hill Road or wherever, the big generalist firms, they'll do A rounds, B rounds, C rounds, D rounds, E rounds, and provably so, right? It's no hiding that fact. And so if you're a cyber entrepreneur and you go to one of the great firms, Sequoia, Kleiner Perkins, what have you, that's wonderful, but we can't follow those firms. So if you're that same cyber entrepreneur and you go to Ballistic, we will ostensibly de-risk that deal for the large generalist firms, and they come in later. And so we get pretty intensely competitive with those firms. When you get to the cyber firms, there's some that are we're investors and supporters in a couple of the firms in the ecosystem. Runtime Ventures. I was forgetting the name there for a second. So Runtime Ventures is Dave Endler here in Austin, and Michael is back on the East Coast, run that firm. They can get involved at a much earlier stage or something that might not quite be ready for a firm like ours. Chenzi Wang, back in the Silicon Valley, runs Rain Ventures, so we're very close. Sin Ventures, Forge Point, 1011 Ventures. We'll bump up against each other once in a while, but just different kinds of companies will gravitate to different firms.
Yeah.
For us, the big competitors are the big names.
And we were talking before the podcast about if you had to break down your week and what percentage would take up the most time, and what it's like to actually sit in a venture capital firm in your position. And you were saying about 60-70% is meetings, new founders, existing founders, etc. What would you say when you do decide to invest? I guess, first of all, what's the ratio from founders that you speak to versus founders that you actually invest into? And then following on from that, what are the key traits that you look for when you do invest into founders?
Sure. And let's start off with some statistics that are pretty common through venture capital. So the number of companies that us or any venture capital firm will talk to per an investment is in the hundreds to one. And that's a big number, but you got to remember every venture capital firm has a number of funds. Each fund is going to have a certain number of companies in it. And so 20 to 30 is typical. Some of the big firms may have 50, 60 companies in each fund. So you're not out in the market looking for any good business. You're looking for one of 20 to 30 that you're going to put in a fund. And in the economics of venture capital, you might have a company that you can make an investment and get a 3x year return, and you'd think that would be great. You got to remember they're 10-year funds. So if you just put your money in an index fund that's tracking the market, you're going to double your money every 10 years anyway. So you're really looking for 100x returns, and there's not going to be a lot of those. But over the course of a 10-year period, there will be a CrowdStrike or Palo Alto Networks or that kind of company, and it's your duty for your limited partners to find that one. And then below that, there'll be companies with a 10x return or around there, and then some with a 5 or 3x that are suitable. And so when you're looking for that 20 or 30 companies, you're trying to load up the probability that you hit one of those ones that's out of the park. And so you're not, sometimes you might be interested in a company that looks less certain, but it's got upside that is also uncertain, possibly huge. And depending on what you already have in the portfolio, you might be looking for a different kind of company. The first investment in a new fund has a lot more latitude, because once you start putting companies in the portfolio, you're now conflicted. We don't like to invest in two companies that are directly competitive. So that number of hundreds to one, it isn't so crazy when you think about it that way. And one of the things you and I have talked about before in the past, there are very few companies that I meet that I say, wow, I don't think that's going to work. Most of them, these are smart people, and they've got experience with the market, and they've thought about this. And even the earliest stage company, they'll have some engagement with the customer, and so they're all sound ideas. It's just how big can they be? And so that's that. One of the things we do as a firm, and I try to do as best I can, if a founder has taken their time to tell me their story, I'm going to take as much time as I can to explain to them my feedback for them were I in their shoes. And if it's a fit, great, we'll be pursuing it. If it's not, I try to explain why. And I try to give as much advice as you can, so that as you're, maybe try to find the right type of investor. Or when you do engage an investor, here's what you want to accentuate on and what have you. And that's, being a founder, you can't not want to help the person because you've been in the same, in their shoes.
Yeah. No, it's so interesting to hear. And I think the ratios, yes, they are quite crazy to hear, but also at the same time, as you said, you're not walking away from these going, these guys aren't going to work out. This isn't going to happen.
No, there's a few that you're really scratching your head, but that's a couple times a year.
Yeah. What would you say are the common pitfalls or mistakes that founders make, particularly for first-time founders?
Yeah. There are two that I want to focus on, and I'll do them in reverse order. I'm going to save the important one for last. So the first is sell your product. Sell. When in doubt, you don't know what to do, sell. Okay, so most founders are builders or creators, and so they're focused on creating, and that's great. It just doesn't matter if you don't have customers, right? And so getting, I don't remember if someone gave me this advice or read it somewhere, but I never worked on a product that I hadn't tried to sell it before I created it. And so, well, how do you do that? You just go out there and try to sell it. And well, what happens if they say yes? You say, I'll be right back. Go build the product. It's a high quality problem, right? And so try to sell it 100 times. Now, get design partners. If you're starting a company and you don't have a few friends in high places that'll be your first customers, maybe you're not ready to start the company, right? So sell. Revenues, get bookings, sell. So that's the first one. By the way, I didn't really understand Y Combinator and all that stuff when it started. It tends to focus on people with the less experience, the better. It's pretty expensive capital, et cetera. And then I sat down and someone explained to me, they basically teach you to be a cold calling maniac selling. And I'm like, perfect. You didn't have to give up that much of your equity, but great focus. All right, so the second one is the big one, and really, hopefully, we can help some entrepreneurs. Nobody, and I mean nobody, cares about your product. And what I mean by that is people come in, the most common mistake is, I've built this thing, and it's so beautiful, let me show you how cool it is. And I think it may work for this type of customer or that type of customer. And it just doesn't matter. If you're lucky and you have a super sweet mom like I did, she might care. But as you get older, you're going to find out she probably didn't care either. Customers care about their problems. Customers have something they're trying to achieve, and there's something in their way. And if your product gets them what they want, then your product matters. and it still won't really matter. You follow me? And so it's a small percentage of entrepreneurs that come in and say, you know what, I'm going to solve this problem for this group of customers, and here's all my data that validates that problem's real. Other people have tried to solve it. They can't. That gives you that moat that you need. And here's my background. I can do it. I'd be way more interested in that startup that has no product, but the founder's relationship to that problem is strong. They're capable, and the problem is intense and real. Then it would be the company that comes in and says, here's this thing I've been working on in 2 years. It's so cool. Don't you think that someone might find it interesting? So just and this is in books. Fall in love with the problem, not your product. It's really, 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 really important.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting what you say prior to recording this podcast about, yes, it's a really interesting focus on the problem, don't focus on the product. For first-time founders, for second-time founders, they probably know that, particularly if they've had a good exit or they've had a good run. For third-time founders, they'll definitely know that if they've had repeat success.
Yeah.
But then what are the pitfalls that you see as founders go through that second, third, fourth run? What are the pitfalls that you see at that level versus the earlier stage founders?
That's a great question. I might spin it a little bit, because repeat founders are rare, and they're awesome because they're not making a lot of those mistakes. There's unexpected things you run into, and so repeat founders are sometimes wrong, but their ability to deal with that and pivot are phenomenal. There's so my mentors, Jake and Ted in venture, other friends who give me advice, their number one advice is, look, you understand the market, you know the technology, that's great, and you'll use that to vet deals and see opportunities. But on the venture side, just look at the patterns. After you talk to thousands of companies, you're going to start to see these patterns emerge, and they're right. And one of the patterns is the I don't want to say the pedigree of the team and the sophistication with the market. And so, there's a lot of first-time founders that there's nobody that wakes up one day, as a tugboat captain and says, I'm going to go be a cybersecurity. So everybody's got a relationship to the market.
Yeah.
But the first-time founder may, they may be on the practitioner side, right? So they may be working in a security department, and they see a problem, and they're kind of new to creating a software company. And one of the pieces of advice I give to people in that regard, go work in a software company for a few years before you kind of want to start one, right? When I was in college, I had a buddy who created a pizza restaurant, and he went to go work at Blondie's Pizza in Berkeley for a year to figure it out, right? You want to know how it works. So there, but that first-time founder may not have tons of relevant experience in terms of building a product or a company. As you mentioned, second-time founder does, right? So they not only worked in a company, they created one. They understand a lot of these nuances of the market. Third-time founders, even better. And maybe if you were gonna, after you've done it a couple times, the only mistake you can really make is not shooting high enough, right? So your expertise at pulling this off is going to be world-class after you do it a number of times. And so that expertise should be applied to really big problems that have really enormous impact and coincidentally outcomes that are wonderful. And so when you're investing, you had asked about the Silicon Valley earlier. there's negative things that we could talk about the Silicon Valley, but if you want to talk about the positive, the pools of talent there are just unbelievable. You know, the engineers and marketing people and salespeople and founders with experience. I mean, it's just the scale is unlike any other place in the world. And when you see one of those deals come through, and it's almost always a team that's done multiple before. And prior to that, they were key players at some big company that was super successful. Their sophistication of how to go after problems and build products is second to none. And the downside, they're outrageously expensive. But you know, this is why early stage investing is great, because you can only be so expensive. But you know, it's not uncommon for companies like that. The founders will put the first 10 million in themselves. They'll have dozens, if not 100 customers. And then they're going to bring in venture capital to help, you know, grow beyond that. And I mean, those are, you want to do everything in your power to get at that grade.
Yeah.
You know,
That's amazing. I know we're coming into the back end of the podcast now, so I wanted to talk about Austin. And the amazing city that we both reside in now. How long have you been in Austin for?
I've been in Austin coming right about 12 years. Yeah, and so when we built AlienVault, I had moved out of the Silicon Valley during 2009, during the global financial crisis. Fortify was growing like crazy. I was on the road 100% of the time, and so I moved to Nevada. There's people always say, well, why would you move to Las Vegas? I had spent some time there when I was a kid, but more importantly, it is one of the best airports in the world to get where you need to go without having a connection. And then in the scarce little bit of time that I did have outside of work, you draw a circle of what you can drive to in 3 hours. You have southern Utah, the backside of the Sierras, north Arizona. So I'm a big outdoors person. I loved it. So I was already out. And when we were building AlienVault, we hired an amazing go-to-market team that were executives at SolarWinds during their hyper-growth period. Rita Salvaggi and Justin Andres. They helped us scale and build the company as we went to the mid-market. And there was a period of time when we were bringing them on board that we offered, well, why don't you move to the Bay Area where the company was headquartered? And they politely said no. And I remember at the time, prior to that, there were 7 times, just remember that number, that I had tried to move someone from Austin to the Bay Area, and I was 0 for 7. And I'd been a few times to visit IBM, up there by the Domain. I never really got to spend enough time to get it, and so now we were 0 for 10. Chanel Vandergrift was also part of that team. And so, you got a senior team of people here, companies back there. The guys in the Bay Area are like, aren't you half the way there already? I know you're on the other side of the mountains. So I was the one who used to commute to build the relationship. I ended up hiring a VP of engineering here to run some things for us, a new product development. So I was spending a lot of time here. And I just fell in love with Austin. People ask, what do you like about Austin? And there are 1,000 things, and it would bore you if I went through them all. But at the core, people in Austin are happy. And when you live in a place where you're surrounded by people that are generally happy, life's better. and then there's a lot of things that go from there. And so my wife and I were expecting our son, and Las Vegas is a hard place to raise kids. Right? Even if you do it well, they know far too much about the world, how it works. And so we were thinking about how we were going to deal with that. And And I told her, honey, I think this Austin would be just a wonderful place to raise kids. So I brought her. We spent a little bit of time. We met people, and honestly, I was recruited by the high school aged kids here. They were kind, generous, smart, polite, and my wife and I fell in love with the culture and everything. And
Yeah.
so we moved.
It's amazing. I don't know if you remember this, but 3 years ago, I first came over to Austin, and I sent you an email. I said, Roger, I'm coming over. I'm in town. Have you got any recommendations for me? The first email came through. It just said Terry Black's. Over there. And I came back ever since. Honestly, it was a great recommendation. But how would you say the landscape of cyber has changed in that time frame that you've been here? Because it's, from my perspective, obviously, I speak to a lot of folks out here, meet a lot of folks, network a lot with security executives, and there's been a big change, like post-COVID, with folks moving over from the Bay Area, some folks moving back, but even predating that since you came over initially.
Yeah.
What does the landscape look like now in comparison to what it did then?
Well, first of all, going way back in time, Austin's had a lot of really top security talent, and think more along the lines of the security researchers. My friend Robert Hansen, Arsnake, H.D. Moore, and a bunch of people like that have been here forever. And I don't know where that originally stems from. The university and the culture of the place. And so it's always been a hotbed for good security research talent. And then, you living here over the years, it's just amazing how many people you'd meet that were either part of a larger company and then they ended up having a little security team here, or native security companies. Tipping Point and SailPoint are obviously two big examples of that. AlienVault, we had, the bulk of our technology team was here. And so I think there's always been a lot of security talent in Austin, and it's definitely growing. One of the things I really dream of is finding a great local investment that becomes the next CrowdStrike or one of those. And so we do that. But there's another aspect, and especially for people that are not from here. It's easy to forget, but Austin is a wonderful place, great place to do business. It's also the capital of Texas, and so if you want to talk about cybersecurity, San Antonio has a huge amount of people there in the federal space that do security. Houston and Dallas are gigantic markets with end customers. A lot of the banking industries moved their security here. And so it's not just, Austin's a wonderful place to live. It's a wonderful place to grow a family. It has all these great things. And it's also very easy to get to the other parts of Texas, and everybody, if you're building a team, you can move people from Dallas and Houston here very, very easily.
Yeah.
So it's Texas in general, and then Austin, I believe it's affectionately called the jewel of Texas.
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah, I agree too. It's a great place. I think if you're a founder, then you're weighing up where to set up your business. You're looking at the Bay Area, you're looking at New York, looking at other areas of the US. Why should someone set up shop in Austin versus, obviously, as you've mentioned, the network of the founders, in the Bay Area specifically, New York's inundated, venture capital, et cetera, et cetera. Why would someone want to lean towards coming into Austin from your perspective?
Sure, and let me pay due respect to all the areas. We live in a world today you can set up shop wherever you want to. I will say this, and this will be controversial with some people. Remote work is great; it always has been, but trying to create a startup where everybody's remote, it'll only work if the first few of you have worked together for years. But as you start bringing new people in and you're trying to build a culture, impossible, right? So you do need a hub. I see some people build multiple hubs, that's fine. But when you're giant, you'll be able to have all the remote workers you want because you got your culture, you got your method, you got your process. When you're absolutely tiny, you could be remote. But during that core part of building, you want a hub. Okay, so where are you going to put your hub or your hubs? The Bay Area has some advantages. The depth of the talent pool is great. You're just going to need it. The costs are astronomical. In the quality of life, I think if you're there and you own a house and you're in a really nice neighborhood and your kids are, in a good school or maybe beyond, it's great. I think for everybody else, it's really very difficult place to live. Single with no kids and not a lot, it's probably okay too. But for people that are trying to build a family and stuff, I like New York as a startup location. It's the vibe and the energy. We've got 3 of our companies, 4 are headquartered back there. So I think New York's on an ascendance. But for me, I'll take Austin every day of the week. Great talent pool. There's a couple of growth hacks. If you're trying to build an engineering team in Austin, well, first of all, talk to Elliot. He'll help you. But there are a lot of people in the Silicon Valley, in other areas that went to school at UT or grew up in Texas. And when those kids start getting to be about school age, it's very easy to bring them back. A lot of people want their kids to grow up here. And so you can recruit here very easily from most parts of the country. The other part that's easy to take for granted, but we are a 3-hour plane flight from every major city in the United States. And when you're on one of those coasts or the other, that's a game changer.
Yeah.
So good talent, great place, good barbecue. And I may have told you Terry Black's, but I would tell you to go down to Lockhart.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I need that recommendation.
I'll talk about that later.
Yeah, I hear Franklin's a lot, but we'll take it offline. But no, it's amazing. Well, yeah, look, really appreciate you finding the time to come on the podcast today, to do the first episode of the Keep Us Insecure podcast. I just want to finish with one final question, Roger. If you could go back to Roger, 21 years old, fresh out of college, ready to start his career, and you could give him one piece of advice, what would it be?
Well, I mean, I'd probably say don't change a thing. don't screw this up. I like where you ended up. But, I don't think I would have gotten that. I think maybe it's going to work out. It's going to be fine. Don't worry. Enjoy the ride. That little bit of worry that motivated you was good, but big picture, if you're in this world, you're trying to create a company and cybersecurity, you've already won. Just have fun.
Amazing. Well, no, thank you so much, Roger. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Ellie. I'm really, really honored. Thank you.
Amazing.